Hello, everybody. This is Empowering Democracy. I'm your host, Joe Firestone. And for tonight's show, I wanted to go over in detail a large part of a video that was made at the Dialogue Works site on YouTube by Nima Alkorshid, who's the host of that program, and his guest, Colonel Larry Wilkerson. Colonel Wilkerson was the longtime aide to Colin Powell at the State Department, and before Colin Powell took over the State Department, he was very experienced as a soldier, and as a diplomat, and he's a very deep thinker on the foreign policy. So I'm going to share, also analyze, comment about 25 minutes from that show between roughly 24:41 and the end of the show, which is at 49 minutes and 2 seconds. And I'm going to start to share the screen for that right now. The title of the video is NATO Doomed. And you should see it being shared actually right now. I'm going to share this video, my video, on Facebook to get started. So I'll start to play the video now and begin to comment on it.
Is that supposed to scare the Chinese so badly that you don't have to do it? Is that your purpose? If so, I got news for them. You don't scare the Chinese with rhetoric.
Larry, it seems that whoever going to be the next president of the United States, we're going to have some sort of reduction in the importance of the continuation of the war in Ukraine. And do you feel it's going that way?
Well, I don't think the Democratic Party can back away from it too fast, because that would make them look like the idiots they are. But I do think I think after the election and things quiet down, maybe after the inauguration, that's a long time and a lot of dead Ukrainians. I'm not sure Zelensky can hold on that long. So there could be precipitous events in that time period that could cause it to collapse.
So remember, this is the opinion of a military strategist, someone with a lot of experience in observing wars, studying wars, and thinking about wars.
Let's say the whole Ukrainian army virtually surrenders from north to south. I mean, what are they going to do then? The Russians are going to have a hard time taking so many prisoners. That'll be their biggest, it'd be like some of the times in World War II in the latter years where, we had so many prisoners, we didn't know how to deal with them. I'm told now, and this is competent demographers. They're telling me that Ukraine started out with probably close to 40 million people, and that they're down now to people inside their borders to about 22 million. That's 50% of the country.
So I've been telling you 20 million or so. That's in the ballpark. Same ballpark. Devastation for Ukraine during this war.
That's either been killed, wounded, or has egressed the country. I don't know how you keep it up. Now, they seem to have a remarkable tenacity for keeping it up. But I just can't. I agree with John Mearsheimer and some of the others that are being extremely pessimistic about it right now. And I say, I don't, there are people who are saying this could grind on for 2 or 3 years. I don't think it can, because I think it's going to be humanly impossible for Ukraine to field anything that could even hope to stand up to a Russian onslaught. So all you're asking is to lose all your country, to lose the whole country. And all we're asking is to have the Russian columns at the Polish border. This is
okay. Since this was done a few days ago, the news broke that Putin had ordered 200,000 more troops, supposedly to finish off the war in Ukraine. 200,000 more troops, fully ready to join the front.
stupid. This is insane.
What's so amazing that Arestovich recently he said that they're gonna do a new counteroffensive on Russians. And the other thing that he said after that interview, he said that Russia is a big country, is a big army. And if I were Putin, I would do the same thing that Putin did in Ukraine. It's unbelievable when they're talking this way. It seems that the reality is coming to their mind. Why we are doing this? Why we were doing this all these 2 years, more than 2 years?
Those are all good points and good questions. I understand right now, and this is from pretty good authority too, that I think everyone knows this who's apprised of the situation, but Putin has restricted almost completely recruiting and drafting in the Moscow area. He wants to keep those people very much on his side, so he dare not recruit them, draft them, or whatever. So what he's doing is he's recruiting and drafting way out in the hinterland, which Russia has masses of course. In the hinterland, he has 300,000 troops he's recruited who are trained, they're finished their training, they're ready to go. They're, in some respects, anxious to go. They'd rather go than, sit there and whatever, especially with the winter coming on. So 300,000 troops, that's just 100,000 less than Ukraine has lost. And he's got that kind of reserve and capability to throw into anything that would be defensive against a Ukrainian onslaught. And I hate to use that term because they don't have the onslaught capability.
Okay, I guess I have to add here that I've heard that it's 200,000 less than the Ukrainians have lost, rather than 100,000 less. I think Larry is being a little optimistic about that.
This is nonsense, as you said. It's just sheer insanity. They're going to get eaten up like a meat grinder. They're just going to beat themselves to death on Russian defenses if they do try to start an offensive that are formidable to the point of not. And look at the air power. Russia's got control of the skies now. So it's just suicide. It's suicidal. But I don't put that past Ukraine. I don't put it past them. You look at their history in World War II and in World War I and other times. It reminds me of, as I keep telling people, you remember those Jewish fighters who went up on the cliffs, the Masada, while the 10th Roman Legion was down in the foothills and committed suicide up there? That's kind of what it reminds me of. Ukraine doesn't have a mountain it can climb and stand on, and all of its people commit suicide. And I don't think Zelensky would do that anyway. He would run off to his chalet somewhere in Switzerland with his money trailing out his back pocket, along with the rest of the oligarchs. But that's what we're talking about. We're talking about the state of Ukraine disappearing under Russian tank treads.
How do you see the conflict in Gaza right now?
That's another thing that Sergei covered. He went through the UN resolutions, including the one that said to go on the heights where he lives.
When he refers to Sergei, that of course is Sergei Lavrov, foreign minister, of Russia. The two men are acquainted through Larry's experience. So they're on a first name sort of basis.
Legal, and then he quoted Blinken saying, "We don't care about the law." Essentially that's what he said. I'm hearing some gruesome things there too. Not only that the Houthis have joined the fight for real now and attacked Tel Aviv and killed one person, I think, and wounded some others, and showed that they could get through the absolutely impregnable Iron Dome with just a simple drone and do some damage. The Houthis are really remarkable people in my mind. I mean, I'm not cheering them or anything like that, but they are remarkable people. And I think I told you, I used to train Yemeni soldiers. And I know that they're former goat herders and sheep herders and things like that, but they're tough people. They're wiry and they're tough people. And we saw the civil war between the North and the South, how much the casualties didn't bother them. And we've seen what the Saudis and the UAE ran into. Little Sparta, UAE backed out. It was too tough. These guys and gals too, they're a formidable force. And if they're going to enter the fray, and let's just face it, it's not Iran that's given them these sophisticated missiles. No, no, no. It's Moscow. And
I thought that was very significant because, of course, propaganda from the U.S. has been stating that it's Iran that backs them and is actually providing weapons to them. Larry is saying, of course, that the Russians have taken a hand in the Gaza war and are shipping weapons to Ansar Allah, otherwise known as the Houthis.
we don't want to say that. We don't want to say that. Putin probably doesn't want to say that outright. He might say it though if he gets pissed off enough. But that's where they're getting these very sophisticated missiles. That means they can get others. That means they can get a lot of others, probably. And he doesn't need all these things in Ukraine. And putting a few down there where the Houthis can shoot them at Israel, and putting a few maybe other places where they can shoot them at people that'll bother the United States. That's the other aspect of this conflict in Ukraine that we're paying no attention to. This could spread, and it could spread. Someone asked me the other day, do you think the European conflict could lead to a regional war, maybe even a global war? I said, yes, but not nearly as swiftly and as dramatically as what's happening in the Eastern Mediterranean. Have you looked at it?
I thought that was a very significant point by Larry Wilkerson.
You understand how many antagonists we have now? And you understand what some of the other countries who've never been able to defeat Israel tried majorly twice, more than that, but twice majorly, came close in the Yom Kippur War, but ultimately were defeated. Do you realize you're rising up in the hearts of these people? The potential for taking out this state that's been such a pissant to them for 70 plus years. You're creating all these people out there who are thinking in these terms, and you're creating all these links, and you've got people like Russia and Iran to arm them. And I wouldn't even be surprised that ultimately the Chinese wouldn't pitch in here too, maybe.
Yes, and I wouldn't be surprised either. And it may be sooner than people think. The opposition to Israel, the axis of resistance to Israel, in the Middle East, is going to be increasingly well armed as time goes on. And they're well armed now. The Houthis are well armed. Hezbollah is well armed. They have the arms they need. And of course, if Iran gets in, they're extremely well armed.
Through Russia or through Iran. But nonetheless, they see an opportunity. Here's the key: to bleed the United States. What we're trying to do to Russia, and ultimately, according to the NATO summit, to China, to turn our own strategy, as insane as it is, on us and to bleed us. And the best place to do that is in the Middle East.
We tried to bleed Russia, in Ukraine. That was the whole point of that war. That's why we provoked it. And we did provoke it. And of course, Russia has more than risen, to the occasion. The Russian economy has more than risen, to the occasion. Now the Russians have thought, well, here's an opportunity for us to bleed you. Let's see what happens to you now when we try it.
And to do it with Hezbollah, and to do it with the Houthis, and to do it with anybody else who will pitch in, including Iraqi and Syrian militias. Russia might change its mind. Right now, Putin's holding Bashar al-Assad back. Putin has told Assad, don't you do anything. If you send rounds into the Golan Heights, make sure they don't hit anybody. So he sent a few artillery rounds. But don't do anything that will get Israel attacking you. They really attacked the Iranians when they hit that consulate in Syria. So he could change his mind. At any time, he could change his mind, especially if he thinks he's got enough of an upper hand in Ukraine to do something elsewhere and to do it forcefully. We could see a regional war spiraling into a much bigger war when the United States figures out what's going on, because all these militias are attacking Israel, and Israel is going down. I was told 2 days ago, I want to check with you. Have you ever interviewed Shir Haver, who's the economist who got kicked out, I think, of Tel Aviv because he was so anti-Netanyahu?
He's an Israeli economist who's based in Germany now. I've seen some of his streams or some of his interviews anyway. He's right on top of the economic consequences of the war for Israel. Maybe the leading expert on that subject.
He's in Europe now, but I think it was Shir that was on, and he said, Eilat is bankrupt. That port is bankrupt now. And you got to think that a lot of this, that's up in the top of the Gulf of Aqaba.
Right, top of the Gulf of Aqaba, but the bottom of Israel, the bottommost point, southernmost point in Israel, that port, very important outlet, which the Israelis had, which the Houthis now have shut off.
The Red Sea. So you got to think, and that's the only port the Israelis have pointing in that direction. You got to think that that's probably because of Red Sea commerce. The things have not been getting through, and so it's bankrupt. He also told me that there are some 30,000 or so Israeli businesses, one man all the way up to a corporation, that are bankrupt. So the economy is beginning to fall apart in Israel. Not only that, more and more people are immigrating too. If Shear's right, if that kind of impact, and a lot of the protests now, of course, there's 120 hostages, I think, they still have not gotten out. A lot of the protests in Tel Aviv and elsewhere, the more virulent ones, are about the hostages because they're furious with Netanyahu for not doing more to get the hostages out. And they see him as stalling to keep the war going. And he doesn't care about the hostages. I think they're right. He doesn't care about the hostages. And they've also now, through various publications, feeding back into Israel, they've learned that on October the 7th, the IDF killed at least half, maybe more, of the people who died on that day.
So there were people who were saying this very early, who were positing it, very early. But recently, this has come out in the Israeli press that as many as half the people killed on October 7th, half the Israelis killed on October 7th were actually killed by the Israeli soldiers themselves. very, very important for internal politics inside of Israel, now being recognized by the Israeli press as true.
So that's not making them happy either. That's a situation, I think, that's more a tinderbox than Ukraine.
How this reality gonna be perceived in Israel, and how is it going to influence their opinion on the Netanyahu administration?
As long as Netanyahu has the hold politically that he does on the people and on his cabinet and the Knesset, I don't see anything breaking anytime soon that might be ameliorating this situation. I'm going down to the Capitol building to protest. I'm going to be down there with a bunch of other people. I hope we have thousands down there to protest his speaking to Congress. I cannot.
So I don't know if he got there. I did not see him in any of the live streaming, okay, that went on, but you could see he was very serious that he was going to go down there and be part, okay, of the demonstrations that took place just yesterday.
I cannot believe that Senator Chuck Schumer, who got up and just lambasted Netanyahu personally, he made sure he wasn't talking about Israel. He just took on Netanyahu. He saw those Senate seats maybe going away that he thought they were going to win, and Gaza was the big issue. So he lambasted, and then he signed on as the leader of the Senate. He signed on. If he'd said no, Netanyahu couldn't come. But he said yes. And of course, that lick-spittle son of a bitch in the House, Johnson, that Christian moron in the House, he was, oh, yeah. Oh.
That's what Larry thinks, okay, of Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House. Colorful language there.
Oh, Bibi, you got to have Bibi here. He's the most dangerous man in the United States right now in many respects. So we're gonna protest. We're gonna go over there. I hope we have thousands to protest. It won't make any difference, but at least we will show that the American people, some of us, are not happy with Bibi coming to our Capitol building to talk to our Congress.
There were 100 Congress people who did not attend, okay, the Bibi talk. Okay, the last time he came, there was 67 who did not attend, so that grew by half, okay, on this occasion. With respect to Rashida Tlaib, the only Palestinian, the only person of whose family was from Palestine in Congress, and whose grandmother, okay, is still there. She hasn't been able to go and visit, okay, her grandmother. She did attend, and she held up a sign. One side was attacking genocide, and the other, okay, was calling Bibi, okay, a war criminal. And during the speech, she held it up, and she turned it around. Very courageous, because the 100 other people who disapproved were not in the chamber to support her. She was there by herself.
But that's going to be, he's going to ask Lindsey Graham, Tom Cotton, Josh Hawley, and a host of others, the leadership. He's going to ask in private meetings that the United States guarantee they had his back if he goes after Hezbollah, full out going after Lebanon and Hezbollah. Then he's going to ask, if I get bogged down, can you help me with Iran? Part of his strike, 1,800 miles, I think it was, if I remember right, part of his strike on the Houthis in retaliation for the drone hitting Tel Aviv was to demonstrate to the Iranians that they had the legs to deliver a strike on any place in the region. Now, they did that with some extraordinary tanking that we have made sure over the last few years that they have.
But tanking is the ability to refuel the planes while they're in flight.
We've even, as I understand it, I was tracking this when I was at state. but I've lost track of it. I don't know how you could reestablish it, but we were making sure that they had enough tankers to strike Iran's nuclear facilities all on their own, because that's what you need. You got to retank and retank and retank, and then if you want your pilots to come home, you got to tank them coming back, because they don't have the legs unless you do that. So that strike on Yemen was to show, I think, partly Iran that, hey, look, we've got 1,800-mile legs. Bet you didn't think we had those. Does he have them for a fleet large enough to really do a lot of damage? I don't know, but I suspect he probably does, because we've been beefing him up every year, a little bit at a time. So there's another potential. He gets permission for the Hezbollah business. I think he will. I think they'll give him permission to do that, and they'll tell him we'll back him up in the Eastern Med. We carry our air power and other Al Udeid and other air power. We'll back him up, and then we'll be in that mess, destroying Lebanon once again, and then Iran will do something. I don't know what it'll be, but they will do something. They don't want to, especially under the new president. They do not want to do it. He's made every overture through every good office, Oman and other places, to let us know that he doesn't want to do anything, that he wants to keep things. He does not want a war with the United States. By the way, the previous hardcore government was the same way. Raisi was the same way. Don't want a war with the United States. But that's what Bibi's going to ask for. He's going to ask for U.S. cover for Hezbollah for sure. And I'm not sure we're going to give it to him for Iran. Even these lickspittle people in the Congress, I don't think they're going to be willing to sign up for Iran. So then the question is, what does Bibi do? Does he go ahead with Hezbollah and let it stop there? What does Iran do if he does Lebanon really in a big way? What does Turkey do? What do other countries do that might have an interest in this? Erdogan has let it be sort of felt out that he's not going to be happy with Lebanon going down either. So what's he going to do? That's the reason I say this has the potential for a wider war, even more so than Ukraine.
We've learned that Bashar al-Assad and Erdogan gonna talk to each other in Moscow, and these changes.
What a place for Erdogan to be going! What a signal to send!
Yeah. Well, how do you find it?
Remember, Erdogan and Turkey, members, of NATO, the southernmost flank of NATO, the largest army, inside of NATO, larger right now than our army. They have 500,000 people in there. And the Turks are thought of as extremely fierce fighters, extremely capable, a really martial culture. Larry will probably mention that, at some point. But the fact that Turkey and Syria, which are sometimes at odds, are going to Moscow to talk to the Russians. Of course, there's a mediation going on there between the two sides, by Putin. But I'm sure there are also conversations about how Putin might support them if they get involved, with Israel. Things are shaping up in a very, very bad and very dangerous way. And I think that's why this video is so important, because Larry is aware of all this and he tells us about it. And we won't find this kind of information, in the U.S. mainstream press. It's just not there. You have to get it from people such as Larry, who are retired, willing to speak freely. And all they want to do is tell the truth about these various areas of the world as they see it. But incidentally, Larry just turned 80. So, anyway.
How do you find the changes that are happening? It seems to me that Washington doesn't consider what's going on.
Well, I think you could put a sort of a codicil on all the statements that Sergei made at the UN Security Council on 16 July that said something like, when he criticized Bretton Woods and WTO and the U.S. hegemony in the world, economic particularly, it needs to be replaced. You can put the codicil on the other side of that. Every statement he made about even the animal farm, well, all the animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. Well, that's ending. You are not more equal than others, United States. That was the whole hint with every statement that Sergei made. He's very good at that. I deliver the predicate, you supply the end. And I think he's right. I think the bow wave of history is moving away from the West and back towards the East, economically, financially, state power wise. And I think we are crazy not to recognize that, absorb the lessons from it, and try to deal with it from a diplomatic, economic, and financial standpoint, and throw away this idea that we're going to beat everybody with our weapons and our military until they, restore our empire. That's impossible. In my view, that's impossible.
That, of course, is another central point you've heard on this program, in various ways. Many military expert people, foreign policy expert people tell you the empire is falling, that these are the last days, of the empire. And I think these people are all telling you the truth, as they see it. And the people inside of the government, I don't think, tell us the truth, because they have a vested interest in staying in power. And if they were to admit that we are losing and all our efforts, are for naught, they would very soon find that they don't have jobs in government anymore.
So I'm just reading about Anthony Eden and the 56 and the Suez Canal crisis and the end of the British Empire, really. Of course, it had begun to unwind with World War I and World War II. But the one interesting aspect of it was Eisenhower's threat to Eden to make a run on the pound at the IMF. And that did it. He realized we're bankrupt. We are bankrupt. And therefore.
Yeah, of course, the UK, while not on the gold standard back in 1956, was on the Bretton Woods system, of financing, which meant that the British pound was pegged, to the dollar. And of course, the dollar was on the gold standard, something like $35, to an ounce of gold, back then. So the world was indirectly on the gold standard through the Bretton Woods financial agreements, which had occurred in 1944. So Eisenhower saying but to Eden, he was going to make a run on the pound, was a devastating threat to Eden, and to UK. And UK had nothing to do but say, okay, boss, we're going to pull back. Because Eisenhower was boss when it came to the UK at that time. And the United States has been the boss of the UK ever since that time. That's 1956.
Therefore, I have no choice. I have to do what President Eisenhower is telling me to do. So I'm get my troops out of the Suez. The only people who were recalcitrant and who lingered and lingered and lingered in Suez to Nasser's great anger were the Israelis. The Israelis were the last to go, and we almost had to go over there and pry them out with a knife.
In the 1956 war, to those who don't know, there was attack, on Egypt to take over the Suez Canal by the UK, by France, okay, and by Israel. It was a collusion, okay, among the three of them. And they almost succeeded. They would have succeeded in taking back control of the Suez Canal, except for the United States, okay, which intervened and said, no, you're not going to create another colonial empire here, restore the colonial empire. Those days are over. And so it was Eisenhower who did that. And it was one of the really good things that he did. Now, this is in contrast to what he did in 1953 when he supported and was part of the coup inside of Iran, which led to the takeover of Iran by the Shah. And that led to many years of repression of the population inside of Iran and made the U.S. hated, okay, in Iran. That hatred dates from 1953. That was probably the worst thing that Eisenhower did in foreign policy. So there's the worst thing he did and one of the best things he did. Both were connected to colonialism and either being in support of colonialism or being against colonialism.
Always mucking things up wherever they can.
Larry, if Netanyahu gets the permission to attack Hezbollah, do you think that they're going to go on the ground? They're going to set fighter jets to attack Hezbollah? With the current situation of the Israeli army, that we know that in terms of their tanks, everything, their army is not that good. How they can do that?
In 2006, you didn't add, I would add, they got their butt handed to them by Hezbollah. So they have a new respect for Hezbollah, or at least those who remember those days do. And some of the officers are now division commanders and things like that. So they probably do remember those days. If they go in on the ground, it'll be worse than 1982 in some respects, where we had to go in and bail them out. And they may be expecting that. They may be expecting that we'll come in and bail them out. Remember, we put Marines in there, and we put New Jersey off the coast and fired our 16-inch guns into the hills and, made a mess of Lebanon is what we did. And we lost 242 Marines and Navy corpsmen in that hotel blast, which taught Ronald Reagan a lesson really quickly. So we backed off sort of and did most things from offshore. But that's probably what they would be counting on, is that if they do go in on the ground and they get in a mess, we would bail them out. And that's what I hope they get told, Netanyahu gets told in this visit on the 24th to the Congress, we won't do. But I don't know that. I think we'll tell him we'll back him up with air power, and we'll back him up with, whatever missile power we need and so forth. But I don't think we're going to tell him we'll back him up with ground troops. We're not going to put ground troops into Lebanon like we did in 82.
So let's hope that Larry is right and that the most we'll do, okay, is air power, okay, and maybe power from the Navy. But even there, when it comes to naval power, it's really very fraught, because with the missile threat from Hezbollah, okay, and from the Houthis, we are risking the sinking of one of our really big boats, okay, our carriers. And that would mean probably the death of a lot of sailors. People here would be very, very upset. So it's a very risky move to support the Israelis, okay, in the conventional way. We have to see if the Biden administration is going to risk that. It's an interesting thing to contemplate also, because the political situation of the Biden administration has now changed. Everybody in it knows that Biden is no longer going to be the president. And word's been circulating that one of the things that Harris will do if she takes over is that she'll replace the three main people in foreign policy, and also more people as well. They're backup too, but specifically Tony Blinken will be gone. Lloyd Austin, the Secretary of Defense, will be gone. And Jake Sullivan, National Security Advisor, will also be gone. These are the three people in back of U.S. foreign policy in Ukraine and in Israel also. And of course, the fourth person is Joe Biden himself, and he'll be gone. But Kamala is reputed to have been the person inside the administration who's been talking peace with respect to the Israeli war now for some time. And she hasn't been successful in making that argument to Biden, and to the other guys. But of course, if she takes over as president, then she will choose her own staff, and they will be going. So now they know they'll be going if she wins, and they'll certainly be going if Trump wins. So either way, they know this is their last 6 months or so, in power. The question is, what will they be willing to do in these 6 months to accomplish their own objectives, in the Middle East, when they look at it from a personal point of view? Does that make them more dangerous from the standpoint of creating a wider war, in the Middle East? Or does it basically tell them, well, it's over. It's too tough to accomplish our objectives. So now the best thing to do for everybody is to back off. We don't know which way they're going to go, but it's very interesting to contemplate that.
83. So I don't know what that means other than Netanyahu might not do it. And I hope that is behind us telling him we won't, is our aspiration that he won't. If we won't be there through thick and thin, he won't do it because he should know. I don't know. The guy's really shown how desperate he can be at times, but he should know he can't do it by himself. Hezbollah will hand him his rear end once again. And that, you get Hamas handing him his rear end in Gaza, and they really are now. They really are. For the power that they have, they are holding up the most advanced, most well-supplied, most thoroughly backed by the superpower in the world called America, army in the world. They're holding it up, and they're killing people, and they're destroying tanks, and they're destroying artillery pieces, and they're killing people. Okay, let's do that on the other flank, and maybe even do it to a greater degree quicker. What you going to do now, Bibi? You are going to not just have your Jewish state go away, as I predicted for some time. Can't be a Jewish state there. It just is untenable. You're going to lose it entirely. You're going to lose it in an act of warfare, and you're not going to resurrect it. So, because at the end of the day, when that starts to happen, they will unass that place so fast it'll look like a desert within a week. As fast as planes can leave Tel Aviv, as fast as planes can leave other airports, as fast as they can get across the border into Egypt and take a plane out of Cairo or wherever, they will do that. And it'll be the end of the experiment.
So that's what he thinks is going to happen, to Israel. He's not giving you the on the other hand, though. On the other hand, what happens if after this trip, if Netanyahu backs off and he says, I really cannot do this. The best thing I can do for Israel and the best thing I can do for myself, at this time is just to have a ceasefire okay, and to negotiate a peace and to negotiate a two-state solution for the Middle East. Now, most people, analyst after analyst, is saying that a two-state solution is no longer possible, okay, in the Middle East. But still, from the UN legal point of view, that is still the solution which the UN and its nations want. It's a solution which many of the Arab nations want, not the people in the Arab nations, but the ruling elites, okay, within the Arab nations don't necessarily want to see the Israelis go. What they would like to see is a relatively conservative solution where there are two states. There is a Palestinian state. The rulers of the Palestinian states are relatively reactionary like themselves. And the Israelis are there to provide basically technical support for the development of their states, okay, in the Middle East. I don't think they mind accepting technical assistance, okay, from Israel. But I think they want the Israelis to give up the messianic vision of Israel. They have had the idea, okay, of greater Israel, to simply become a regular state in the Middle East, relatively small and with relatively little power. That, I think, is an acceptable solution to them. So if that happens, I think that Israel could survive, but still much of Larry's vision would still hold, because for many of the Jews who are living in Israel, especially the Jews who are living in the occupied areas, they're completely down with the messianic idea, and they probably won't want to live, okay, inside of an Israel that is secular and basically, just like another state, another regular state. Their dreams of a third temple would be gone. Their dreams of dominating the Middle East, okay, would be gone. And their dreams of having a special position in Palestine, okay, would also be gone. Okay, the settlers who are in the occupied areas then would probably not want to live in the successor Palestinian state. And they would probably either go back home or go into Israel itself, if Israel would have them. So it's not entirely predictable what's going to happen if there's a peace conference coming soon. And if there's a serious solution that imposes two states on the area happens, it's not clear how the Jewish population of Palestine, those in Israel and those in the occupied territories, are going to respond to that. It's not clear in detail, but I think it's pretty clear that a lot of them would be leaving. At the start of this war, there were about 7.5 million Jews, both in Israel, okay, and in the occupied areas. That total number of Jews might well go down to 6 million or 5 million or 4 million in a successor Israeli state. That's one of the things we have to look out for in case of a peaceful settlement or a newly peaceful settlement. In case of an outcome where Israel is destroyed, then most probably most of the Jews would just be leaving the area entirely because the successor state would then be a Palestinian state. It would be a one-state solution and not a two-state solution. So going on to the end, we're very near that now.
That's a resolution that is becoming more and more believable as a possibility. Every day that goes by that Netanyahu persists in this kind of warfare and this kind of riling up and incentivizing not only the local powers, but other powers who have other motivations to help them do it. All of which we apparently are not looking at. Or if we are, we're even dumber than I thought.
So I thought that video was an important one for you to know about. It was a very important one for me to know about. I'd seen other people make some comments of that sort. I've had thoughts like that myself, but I don't have the military expertise that Larry has. I may have the same general foreign policy thoughts and the same hunches as to what might happen, but of course I don't have. I might have also a similar historical background, to Larry. But I don't have the military expertise, that he has. I don't have the contacts inside of the military in the United States and the military of foreign powers. So, Lana Dell says, hi, Joe and all. And John B. says, yesterday was a day of shame for the U.S. nation. No amount of propaganda can paper over a loss of U.S. international standing. The damage is irreversible, in my opinion. Maybe. I think that's a good yes. We're such a big country, and our resources are so great that if we embark on a period of good behavior, I'm not saying we're going to regain our international standing of the hegemon. No, that's not going to happen. But we may be able to create standing as a collaborative and peaceful power, in the international system, as one of the poles, of the multipolar system. I sincerely hope, I believe that can happen. But of course, we need to have great changes in our government if that is going to happen. I've been trying to bring about those changes with some of my ideas, such as the dump the corruption idea and some of the foreign policy ideas I've talked about on this particular stream. But it's going to require replacing the powers that be. I have to add that the ascension of Kamala Harris to the presidency may be a good sign to replace some of the powers that be, but not the whole structure that's there, because Kamala Harris is certainly not a revolutionary. She may be someone who's willing to limit the damage in certain areas and to reduce the danger that all of us are facing. But she's not a person that's going to seek to remake the whole system, and especially not replace the donors in the system, in any sort of useful way. Sandy Degg says hello, share it to Facebook. Sandy Degg says hi, Lana, John, Joe, and Bonnie. And John B. says Netanyahu pulled back the curtain, exposing U.S. hegemonic imperialism for what it is. Many minor nations fearfully cast a blind eye to U.S. Wickedness. But now an alternative, fairer path is BRICS. Yeah, BRICS and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization and the other institutions being set up by Russia and the various nations, of Asia. Which Arab states? Jordan, Jordan, the Saudis, maybe Egypt. Maybe the UAE. Those states maybe don't want the Israelis to leave. They would rather do business with the Israelis. Of course, they don't want the Israelis to dominate the area, but they may be just as happy to still have an Israeli state somewhere in that area. John B. says the fall of Israel, as Larry describes, will portend irrevocable loss of global dominance. The global South is already walking away from U.S. exploitation. In my humble opinion, Russia, China, Iran will lead. Well, I would say don't underestimate Turkey. Turkey may eventually have as big a role, as Iran in this, but I agree. Russia, China, and Iran will certainly be three nations that lead. But I would probably add Turkey to that, and some of the nations of Africa will soon be coming along very, very significantly, as well. So I think that does it for tonight's show. I guess it was a good idea for me just to focus on that one thing, because for a change, I can be done on time. So anyway, thank you very much for coming. I'm not sure I'll be coming back tomorrow night. I will try to come back tomorrow night. If I do, I will focus on some more geopolitics and some domestic politics also. It's not going to be just an IR show. It's going to be a mixed show for tomorrow night. So that's what I'll do then if I have a show tomorrow night. If I don't have one tomorrow night, I may have one on Saturday. I'm basically going day to day right now. I realize that I do need some rest. So I'm not sure when I'll be taking that rest. So anyway, thank you for coming. Alana says good night. And she says, can you talk about J.D. Vance and his nonsense? I haven't been keeping up with J.D. Vance and his nonsense. I don't think what he says is going to be very important, for the future. At least I'm not certain, it is. I think what remains to be seen is how quickly Kamala can pull together not just support inside the Democratic Party, but broader support, among the mass of the people. Right now, she's surging, in the polls. if she can surge and build a very appreciable lead over Trump and Vance over the next month, there'll be very aggressive campaigning then, and then there'll be the convention and the coronation, okay, at the convention. If that allows her to build a big lead, like a 15-point lead or something like that, then I think it's going to be very hard for Trump and for J.D. Vance, okay, to win. I think a lot will depend also on the selection of a vice presidential candidate. By the way, Lana, I am hoping for Tim Walz, that he will be the choice for vice president. I think it's important to have someone from the North Central states, from the Rust Belt states, so-called, who's on the ticket, someone who can easily counter Vance. And I think Tim Walz is that particular person. Okay, so I am looking for him and hoping for him. Some people are thinking that it might be Josh Shapiro. I am not hoping for Josh. I think he's a very effective politician, but unfortunately, he's very much wedded to Israel, okay, and to AIPAC. And so I'm not hoping for him. And I don't think some of the other candidates are quite as important to the overall picture. I no longer think, since it won't be an open convention, I no longer think that Gavin has much chance, because I don't think you will generally want two people from the same state. So Lana says, get some rest. Okay, I will. I'm going to be going over to Dee's show for at least a minute, but I don't think I'll be staying there for very long. Okay, so I'm going to end the stream for now. Thank you very much for coming. I enjoyed the stream. I think it was another successful one. Have a very good night, and hopefully I'll see you tomorrow night or Saturday night. Thanks.